The lights of a small-town football stadium shine bright under the night sky as the cheerleaders perform their final routine. To an outsider, it was perfect, a wholesome image of school spirit and community. But beneath this picture-perfect facade lurked a dark and deadly secret that unraveled into one of the most shocking crimes this town has ever witnessed. What began as whispers of an inappropriate relationship between a popular cheerleader and her charismatic coach spiraled into an affair riddled with manipulation, betrayal, and ultimately, brutal murder. How did this seemingly unassuming town become the epicenter of a chilling crime that shocked the nation? Who would be driven to kill, and why? Today, we unravel a relationship that crosses lines, an investigation that tears down the web of lies, and the haunting aftermath of murder, which left two families in tatters. Diving into this chilling tale will find you questioning how far someone will go when love turns to obsession and obsession turns violent. Let's begin with the two central characters in this tragedy: a young, beautiful cheerleader who aspired to reach stardom, and the coach whose dark side was to unfold in the most horrific manner. 17-year-old Emily Carter, star of the cheerleading squad, seemed to have it all. She had that radiant smile and an infectious personality that was more than just a cheerleader, but a beacon of hope for her small-town high school. Big dreams for her were attending a prestigious university and eventually becoming a professional choreographer. But behind that flawless exterior, Emily navigated challenges that would make her vulnerable to a dangerous influence. Emily grew up in a loving but strict household. Her parents were proud and protective, always reminding her of the responsibilities that came with being in the public eye. Despite their watchful care, Emily yearned for independence. The pressures of being perfect, coupled with the desire for freedom, created cracks in her seemingly ideal life. At school, Emily was admired but also envied. Her friends described her as driven, yet deeply compassionate. She always put others first, one friend recalled. But Emily's inner circle also noticed subtle changes as her senior year unfolded: late-night disappearances, secretive behavior, and a growing distance. They didn't know then that Emily was hiding a secret too heavy to bear. Little did anyone know, her relationship with a supposed authority figure, meant to care and protect her, was sending her to a dead-end street. Mark Rivers was a man of contradictions. The charismatic, dedicated coach spent over a decade building his reputation as someone who could inspire respect and results. But beneath the veneer of professionalism, there were whispers, rumors of favoritism, boundary-crossing behavior, and questionable choices. Mark was actually the result of a journey of redemption to becoming a coach. An ex-athlete whose career ended too soon because of an injury, he channeled all his frustrations into nurturing the younger talents. Coach Rivers wasn't just about winning games, a former colleague said. He wanted to create champions in life. But that drive to connect with students sometimes veered into dangerous territory. Outside the field, life was unstable for Mark. He had been divorced and lived alone, nursing insecurities about his failed marriage and the unfulfilled dreams. In quiet moments, colleagues noted a darker side: mood swings, volatile outbursts, and a penchant for validation from others, especially from younger students who heaped adoration on him. In the tight-knit community, opinions on Mark were divided. Parents trusted him with their children, but some raised concerns. He was overly friendly, one parent recalled, but nobody ever thought he was dangerous. Looking back, the warning signs were there. As Emily Carter became one of Mark's most promising cheerleaders, their connection grew. At first, it seemed like mentorship. Then it turned into something far more sinister: the affair. It all started innocently, or so it seemed. Mark often stayed late after practice, offering Emily extra tips to perfect her routines. For Emily, these sessions felt special, like someone finally saw her potential. For Mark, they were something much darker. What began as professional guidance gradually crossed lines. Compliments about her cheer routines turned into personal remarks. "You're mature for your age," he would say, or "you're not like other girls." Emily, flattered and naive, didn't recognize the grooming tactics at play. Their relationship soon became secretive. Late-night text messages, private meetings, and subtle physical contact were signs that something was amiss. Emily's friends noticed the change but didn't know how to approach her. She was always on her phone, always smiling, one friend said, but she wouldn't tell us why. The affair deepened, and with it, manipulation crept in. Mark used his position to isolate Emily, making her believe their relationship was special and worth any risk. But with the whispers in the community growing louder, tensions escalated. Emily felt trapped, and Mark became possessive. What started as a twisted form of admiration was now a ticking time bomb. The stakes were about to explode, leading to a crime that no one saw coming. The crime. The weeks leading up to that fateful night were ones of increasing unease. Emily had begun to distance herself from Mark, but his obsessive tendencies only grew more pronounced. Friends said she seemed on edge, jumping at every notification on her phone. She was scared of something or someone, one close friend said. Emily confided in her best friend, Megan, that she wanted out of the relationship, but feared what Mark might do if she ended things. But Mark was sliding. Text messages to the girlfriend escalated into chaos, from anxious to angry. Screenshots recovered from investigators revealed texts he'd written. "You're not going to just get to leave me, Emily. I gave you everything. And if you betray me, there's gonna be some consequences." On the evening of November 17th, Emily left home at about 9 p.m. According to her, she had a test to study with Megan. This was a normal practice for Emily, who often kept late hours with friends. However, her mother later remembered an odd tension in her daughter's demeanor that evening. Unbeknownst to her parents, Emily headed toward the woods near the old football field, where she and Mark had secretly met many times. Mark begged her to come out one last time and promised that he only wanted to talk. Emily hesitantly agreed, thinking that finally this was the opportunity to put an end to the relationship and move on with her life. What happened during the meeting is a chilling mystery, but evidence suggests that there had been a heated argument over something. Mark, possibly consumed by jealousy and a feeling of rejection, probably confronted Emily for leaving him. Witnesses nearby reported hearing raised voices followed by a scream. Forensic evidence later pieced together the scene. Emily had defensive wounds on her arms, showing that she had tried to defend herself against the attacker. The ground was also uprooted as if there was a tremendous fight, and there were blood splatters on the tree trunks in the area. The following morning, a jogger passing through the woods spotted Emily's body. She was face down on the ground, cheerleading jacket torn, with her phone smashed next to her. The scene was grotesque. Emily had blunt force trauma to the head and had been stabbed multiple times. The news spread like a fire throughout the town. "Nothing like this has ever happened here," a resident said. "We couldn't believe it. Emily was just a kid." As news spread, the community rallied around Emily's grieving family. Vigils were held, and social media lit up with tributes to the beloved cheerleader. But alongside the mourning came questions: who could have done this? And why? Suspicion quickly fell on Mark. His strange behavior in the days after the murder was redolent of a man who was under siege. He skipped practices, avoided his colleagues, and was spotted arguing with someone on his phone outside a local diner. An anonymous tip was received by the police, which led them to Mark. They started digging into his relationship with Emily, uncovering a trove of incriminating evidence: text messages, emails, and witnesses who had seen them together at odd hours. It was clear that their relationship was far from innocent. As the investigation unfolded, the horrific details of their relationship and the events of that night came to light, revealing a chilling web of obsession, manipulation, and betrayal. The investigation. The investigation into the murder of Emily Carter began on a still, eerie woods morning when her body was discovered. Police cordoned off the area immediately, with crime scene tape flapping in the morning breeze. Detectives took great pains to go over the site, detailing every aspect of the scene: the bloodstains, the ripped cheerleading jacket, the smashed phone. This was no random act of violence, lead detective Sarah Hamilton would later remark. This was personal. The first step was the securing of the crime scene. Forensic teams combed over the area, collecting dirt, leaves, and broken branches for analysis. The bloodied branch, believed to be the weapon, was bagged as evidence. Photographs of the disturbed soil revealed a desperate struggle. Within hours, the police turned to Emily's phone. Though it was damaged, forensic technicians were able to extract text messages from the cloud, a disturbing exchange with Mark Rivers. "Meet me tonight," Mark had written the evening before Emily's death. "We need to talk." Emily's hesitant reply, "Fine, but this is the last time," took on a haunting significance in light of what happened next. Meanwhile, witness interviews were starting to tell a compelling story. One jogger who ran through the woods around 10 p.m. reported hearing raised voices. Then there was the couple with their dog, who saw a parked car that matched the description of Mark's vehicle. "We didn't think much of it at the time," said one of the pair. "It's a quiet area. But now I wish we reported it." By the afternoon, Mark Rivers was already in the police's sights. Several of Emily's friends had begun to open up, suspecting something was wrong between her and the cheer coach. One recounted a particularly disturbing conversation where Emily described Mark as obsessive, saying she wanted to break off things but didn't know how. Police came to Mark's house for questioning, and they saw him visibly shaken and on the defensive. "He kept insisting he had nothing to do with it," said Detective Hamilton, but his demeanor raised red flags. His alibi, that he was home all night, sat well until surveillance footage placed his car near the woods around the time of the murder. The forensic analysis of evidence from the crime scene was pivotal in solidifying the case against Mark. Blood found on the branch matched Emily's DNA, but investigators also discovered traces of Mark's blood on the same weapon, likely from a scratch she inflicted while defending herself. Another crucial piece of evidence was Emily's fingernails. DNA recovered from under her nails confirmed she had fought back against her attacker and was a match for Mark. "This was the nail in the coffin," one forensic scientist said. No pun intended. On November 20th, 3 days after Emily's body was discovered, police arrested Mark Rivers at his home. A scene from a movie unfolded in front of the neighbors who were stunned, their once respected coach taken away in handcuffs. The arrest sent shockwaves through the community. Parents who had entrusted their children to him felt a deep sense of betrayal. During his first interrogation, Mark denied involvement in Emily's death, saying he had just gone for a drive that night. But when confronted with the mounting evidence, text messages, witness accounts, DNA, his story began to change. He tried to frame it as a misunderstanding, Detective Hamilton said, but the evidence was overwhelming. Mark was indicted for first-degree murder. The case picked up fast as a national phenomenon. The courtroom was full of people when he appeared in court for arraignment, and Emily's family sat silently, stoically in the front row. Prosecution painted an image of how an obsession consumes a man the way Mark groomed her and manipulated her to break free from all this. Some key witnesses testified, such as Megan, who broke down and described how Emily feared ending the relationship. Forensic experts presented the physical evidence against her, while detectives walked the jury through the timeline of events that led to the murder. Mark's defense team tried to put across that the relationship was consensual and that Emily's death was an accident. The evidence, however, offered little room for doubt. This wasn't an accident, prosecutors said during closing arguments. This was premeditated, cold-blooded murder. It was a battle for the law books, but for the community, it was much more. The school board came under severe criticism for failing to take action on previous complaints that had been made regarding Mark's behavior. Parents called for tougher control over staff, and several administrators resigned in protest. "We trusted them to protect our kids," one parent said at a heated town meeting, "and they failed us." Local media followed every twist and turn of the case with reporters camped outside the courthouse every day. Emily's case was a national symbol for dangers of predatory relationships. This case sparked wide discussions about power dynamics and the responsibility of authority figures. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict: guilty. Mark Rivers was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and sorrow as Emily's family embraced their fight for justice finally over. Though Mark's conviction brought some closure, questions remained. Could the school have done more to prevent this tragedy? Were there other victims of Mark's manipulation who never came forward? And how could the community rebuild after such a devastating betrayal? The investigation into the murder of Emily Carter was an affirmation of the commitment of law enforcement and the tenacity of a grieving community. It was also a harsh reminder of the price of unchecked power and the need for vigilance in protecting vulnerable young people. Aftermath and current status. The conviction of Mark Rivers brought a sense of justice, but the emotional wounds left by Emily Carter's murder were far from healed. The family, who lost Emily, described the days following the verdict as a mix of relief and sorrow. "We fought so hard to see this day," Emily's mother, Linda Carter, said during a press conference. "But nothing will ever fill the void she left in our lives." Hundreds from the community attended Emily's funeral on a cold December morning. Friends, family, classmates, and even strangers who had been moved by her story gathered to pay their respects. The ceremony was both heartbreaking and cathartic, a chance to honor Emily's life and say goodbye. "She was our sunshine," Linda said through tears. "Now she'll be a light for others." The following months would challenge the town to face all that had transpired. The community was shocked when they learned about Mark's predatory behavior. Most of them were shocked because he had brought their children close to his heart. "It's difficult to believe that someone we thought we knew could do something so evil," one parent said. "We feel betrayed, not just by Mark, but by the system that let this happen." The school board was put under intense scrutiny. Parents insisted that they be held accountable, suggesting that previous complaints about Mark's behavior were dismissed or ignored. A few administrators lost their jobs over the scandal, and the district set up a few new policies that included staff training on the recognition and reporting of grooming behavior. Emily's parents transformed their sorrow into a positive force, forming the Emily Carter Foundation to make known the dangers of predatory relationships and advocate for better protection for minors. The foundation lobbied closely with lawmakers to advocate for Emily's Law, which would create more severe penalties for those who, in positions of authority, take advantage of those trusts. "We can't do anything about what happened to Emily," Linda said on a television interview, "but we can fight to make sure that it doesn't happen to someone else." Mark Rivers is currently serving a sentence of life imprisonment in one of the maximum security prisons. It is reported that he spends most of his time indoors, being a reclusive and volatile inmate. He is said not to mingle with other prisoners or participate in the rehabilitation programs. Despite his conviction, Mark remains innocent, having made many appeals that are turned down to date. He probably has little chance of overturning his verdict since the evidence presented at trial is way above what he may bring before the court. Most have wondered how Mark's actions did not come to an earlier light. Were there any other victims who remained quiet or kept mum? And could the end, of Emily at least, have been otherwise if the warning signs were actually taken more seriously? These questions have sparked continued debates in the community, with some parents calling for a thorough investigation into how the school handled previous complaints. "We need to know who knew what and when," said one parent. This wasn't just one person's failure, it was a systemic failure. It may have been tragic that Emily had to die, but Emily's legacy has truly been a beacon of hope and change. Her foundation is now an internationally acclaimed national organization, with schools and advocacy groups it partners with to ensure that students learn how to avoid and prevent abuse. "She wanted to make a difference in the world," Linda said. "Now she's doing that in ways we never could have imagined." The case further became a national debate over power dynamics in student-teacher relationships and the necessity for stricter safeguards. The media attention towards the story of Emily sparked more stories in similar cases across the country, prompting reforms in several states. The experts on child psychology and criminology pointed at the case as a crucial turning point. This tragedy exposed the gaps in our systems. One of them said, "It's a wake-up call for all of us to do better." Emily Carter's is a story of heartbreak and loss, but also of resilience and hope. Her life, though tragically cut short, continues to inspire change and protect others from suffering the same fate. As her father said during a recent memorial, "Emily was taken from us too soon, but her light will never go out."